Well, hello everyone, and welcome to 2026. It is great to see you all here today. My name is Ricky Bradley, and I'm a member of the CCL staff based currently in Dallas, Texas. And I'm so grateful to be with you for our January 2026 Citizens Climate Lobby National Meeting. It's important that whether you're joining on your own or with others, it just matters that you are here today. So thank you so much for being here. If you haven't already, please say hello in the chat. Just let us know where you're joining from and how many people are with you. We just love to hear and see those chats and see what the representation looks like across the country. You can also see a link in the chat to log your attendance for today. Please take a moment to do that so that we can make sure that we count you as a part of today's meeting. To get us started today, it's my honor to welcome two leaders who have helped steward CCL with thoughtfulness and a lot of integrity. Please join me in welcoming the board chairs of Citizens Climate Education and Citizens Climate Lobby, Dr. Sandra Kirtland Turner and Bill Blancato.
Hey everybody, I'm Bill.
Hi,
I
I'm
am
Betty.
and there's Sandy. I am chair of Citizens Climate Lobby, which is our 501c4 organization. Sandy is chair of Citizens Climate Education, which is the 501c3, which is our tax exempt organization. CCL primarily looks after our lobbying and interactions with Congress. CCE does our trainings and educational outreach. And I'm here today because if you look at Ricky's name, you'll see a title next to him that says Executive Director. And this is the first monthly meeting where Ricky has that title. Many of you may know that former ED Rachel resigned last June. Soon after that, the boards of CCL and CC asked Ricky to step up as interim executive director. We're fortunate that he was here and willing to do that. I'll say that when Ricky first stepped in, he was a little bit like a deer in the headlights, but he quickly dove in and got well versed on all the aspects of responsibilities for the executive director. He did a very good job. And then in December, during the board meetings, we decided unanimously to offer the permanent position to Ricky, and we're glad that he accepted it. Many of you probably know Ricky from your many years here. I learned at the Conservative Conference, he's a graduate of Auburn University in Alabama. He grew up in Alabama. He spent some time in sports radio, which was an interesting factoid. Ricky's been with CCL for many years. He's been a group leader, a regional coordinator, head of our IT department, spent time as our VP of field operations, and of course has been essentially an ED role since last summer. We're fortunate to have Ricky here. He's a delight to work with. He has a good sense of humor. He's smart. He's working hard to update our systems and our strategy to meet the current needs and the current situation in DC. Ricky, thank you so much for being here for us and your hard work and being a pleasure to work with. Sandy, you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, just a few words to echo all of Bill's comments. The boards were just so impressed by Ricky's ability to balance an embodiment of CCL's long history, but also with the vision and initiative to move our organization forward in what we all recognize are very challenging times for climate action. And so just so everyone knows, Bill and I meet with Ricky every week. It's a highlight of my week, but it means that for the last 6 months, I've been able to directly observe Ricky's ability to really invigorate CCL staff and volunteers, lead us to this new strategic plan that I'm so excited about, and complete a wonderful, very strong year-end fundraiser that shows, I think, the trust and faith that our broader community has in this organization. So the boards, I think all of us, we're clear-eyed about the challenges that are facing U.S. climate action, but to me, that just demonstrates why CCL's approach is necessary. And I just want to echo again that Ricky's enthusiasm and his balance of optimism with realism and a work smarter, not just harder work ethic, really provide the leadership qualities that I know our organization needs. So I'm excited to be able to keep working with Ricky and all of you as we move forward and protect our climate. So thank you to everyone.
Well, thank you so much, Bill and Sandy, and thank you for both your leadership and your trust. I think it's not only in me, but it's also in the leadership team who I have the privilege of leading, the CCL staff, of course, our volunteer leaders and CCL volunteers. So you're placing a lot of trust in all of them. So thank you so much. I know that they want to say that as well, but all the mics are muted at this point. So yes, I'll just say over the past 6 months that serving in this interim role, I've had the privilege of working closely with staff in a different way and volunteers and the members of our two boards. And what stands out, over and over is the strength of CCL, that even when things feel really bleak, that we have deep trust with each other, we have relationships, and just a shared commitment to doing this work in the CCL way. So I think it's really rare for any organization. It's a rare opportunity to help an organization see a different, clear strategic path. I say that to the leadership all the time, leadership team, like we have such an opportunity here and such an awesome responsibility to uphold the CCL way, the way that Marshall, Mark, and Madeline did before. But with that, I'd like to take just a few minutes to sort of reflect on where we are as an organization and talk about a little bit more where we're headed next as we start off the new year. Now, at this point in the program, we usually pause to lift up volunteer highlights from the past month. We'll continue to do that today as well. You can go and start sharing your chapter's wins or your moments of progress in the chat. And after this national update, we'll take time to read a few together and have a special guest who did something really special out in the field this past December. So normally when you see a state of the organization address, what you'll notice is I don't have a vice president or a speaker of the house sitting behind me, and my dog is not there right now. So sometimes there's a dog there, sometimes there's not. But I want to start off 2026 with just naming that, Citizens Climate Lobby at this point is healthy, focused, and I think capable of meeting the moment, as we'll talk about later and Sandy alluded to. Not just because the climate challenge has become easier, it hasn't. Not because the political environment has suddenly become calm or predictable. It hasn't. We're in a good place because of how we're meeting this moment. And that strength starts with you. Because of your generosity, your persistence, and your belief in this work, we closed the year having met our year-end fundraising goal. And I think that achievement matters more than it might appear at first glance. When you think about the context of what we're in right now, what we're facing. This was a year marked by renewed attacks on climate science, rollbacks of hard-won progress, leadership transitions within CCL, a broader climate just of anxiety and uncertainty. And, many supporters across the climate movement face real trade-offs and redirected resources to other urgent causes. And that's a legitimate response. And yet you chose to invest in relationship-based climate advocacy when despair would have been the easier response. You affirmed through your actions that steady, values-driven work still matters, even when those political wins are rough and the outcomes are certainly far from guaranteed. So meeting our year-end goal in this context is really more than a financial milestone. It is a vote of confidence in the CCL model, the partnership we have with people, and in the long game of building durable political will. It means that we go into 2026 with a stable, dedicated, and deeply passionate staff. They have the knowledge and the experience, believe me, to understand where real windows of opportunity exist, and how to take advantage of those, whether we're advocating or if we're protecting climate solutions. But the CCL staff does not create change on its own. We do that in partnership with you, each and every one of you, each and every day. Staff, we can help build the systems, design the strategy, and create pathways forward, but you bring it to life in communities, your congressional offices, and relationships that you're setting up across the country. Together, that partnership is what makes CCL different. So we're in a position to deliver on a promise I made at the summer conference that CCL is not a top-down organization, nor are we a bottom-up organization. We are a partnership between staff and volunteers, between chapters on the East Coast and the West Coast, and in the Third Coast and the Midwest and the states in between. We're all in partnership together, and even between the states. Now, looking ahead, one priority we're excited about is getting back together in person with purpose. So in 2026, we're excited to lean more fully into state and multi-state conferences and to partner closely with the local organizers who are bringing those to life to bring CCL content, training, and strategy on the road. Those gatherings are more than just events. They are where relationships are renewed, where your agency is built, and where your skills are sharpened. Of course, virtual engagement is an important part of life now, so we'll continue to do that. But when people can leave the room more connected than when they arrived, that's powerful. We also entered 2026 with a lot more clarity. Again, we have sharpened our strategy and our theory of change. We've become clear about how we see influence actually working, clear about how volunteers grow and become greater advocates. We'll talk about that later today. How leaders are developed and how political conditions shift. We are clear about where we must improve ourselves so that when preparation meets opportunity, we can help move climate policy. Now, that clarity does a lot for us. It sharpens, well, it helps us figure out what we prioritize, how we engage, and how we'll invest our time and energy. It matters because this is the important part. The opportunities that we have ahead of us right now are not in some abstract, distant future. It is a policy moment that is already unfolding, and that's in large part because of CCL. And what do I mean by that? Well, in response to the administration's attacks on science funding, we opened up a new avenue of advocacy last year to meet the moment. And I got to say, this past week, we saw some dividends from that we were super successful. And I think we can be able to look back at this and say that we had a big, big role to play in this. Now, what am I talking about? This week, the Senate Appropriations Committee released their bipartisan package of bills, the appropriations process that you hear about all the time, the process that Jen talks about a lot that sometimes goes over your head. Jennifer Tyler, our government affairs vice president. But the bill largely scraps the administration's planned cuts. Let me say that again. A bipartisan package of bills that largely scraps the administration's planned cuts. And then Thursday, the House voted to approve the package. Now, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves because Congress has yet to pass the final appropriations bill. But since both the House and Senate have proposed bills rejecting the White House cuts, we can confidently say the bills will look kind of similar to those that they're suggesting. Now, where did we play a role? If we go back to earlier in 2025, we undertook efforts to protect funding for, I'm going to throw out some agency names here, but just bear with me. The Advanced Research Projects Agency, the Energy Office. If you went to the DC conference in July, we lobbied on that. We also lobbied to continue funding for the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. We also took actions to help buttress NASA and to fight to protect funding and the integrity of NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So how successful were we? Well, looking at the proposed budgets from the Senate and the House, for ARPA, that first one, the Senate limited cuts. This is probably the worst result, but I'll just put this one at the top. Limited cuts to 110 million when the administration had proposed 200 million. So that does preserve a core engine of breakthrough in clean energy innovation. But get this one. The Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, the administration had suggested to slash funding all the way down to $888 million. The Senate funded it at $3.1 billion, right? That's huge. The administration also suggested that the office should just be eliminated entirely, but obviously that's not going to be the case. The Senate funded science missions at $7.25 billion at NASA. That's only a 1.1% reduction compared to the 47% reduction proposed by the Trump administration. That, of course, safeguards critical Earth and climate science. And then with NOAA, the Senate maintained overall funding at $6.2 billion, really rejecting the administration's proposed $2.2 billion cut to research grants and preserving the Office of Atmospheric Research at near level funding, despite proposals, again, to eliminate it entirely. We were there at a point when many environmental and climate organizations shifted their focus almost entirely to states. We stayed the course at the federal level. And we did something that is increasingly rare but deeply effective. We showed up and called Congress in. I mentioned our July lobbying. It was more than a policy push. It was an intentional act of democratic engagement. We went there to listen with curiosity, to build relationships, and encourage members of Congress to fully exercise their constitutional authority. And in doing so, we advanced smart energy innovation and climate science while strengthening democratic norms. Our instinct was to run towards the fire, not to run away from it. Now, this year, we'll continue to engage in protecting funding from backsliding where appropriate. In fact, our first mass mobilization of the year does just that. We're going to talk about that a little bit later today. But as we look ahead to climate energy policy in the year before us, also know that we officially launched our 2026 permitting reform campaign last Thursday evening. It's a fantastic training and a fantastic series. I can't say enough about it. The series is designed to help us move beyond surface level talking points, equipping our volunteers with a deep understanding of the policy so that you can help see and educate communities or understand where their hangups might be about permitting reform and how it fits into the bigger picture of this durable climate progress. One of the most important truths that CCL research manager Dana Nuccitelli shared on Thursday's training is this, and this is a fantastic framing of what permitting reform is about. That most of what is being slowed down by the permitting reform process of today, or permitting process today, is clean energy. Let me say that again clearly. Most of what is being slowed down by the permitting process today is clean energy. That's transmission lines, renewable generation, grid upgrades. It's the very infrastructure we need to cut emissions, to strengthen our energy security and lower costs for families. And all that is getting stuck in a system that was just not built for this moment. So permitting reform is not a climate side issue. It is a climate solutions accelerator. And it is an area where bipartisan agreement is possible when that conversation is grounded in shared values, things like reliability, affordability, local benefits to air quality, and of course, lower emissions. Now, that same lens applies to the Fix Our Forest Act. We're now waiting for a Senate vote to be scheduled. This is, again, a concrete opportunity to not only reduce wildfire risk, which protects communities and improves the forest health as carbon sinks, but also cuts emissions. So it's practical and it is urgent. And those efforts are not isolated. They are part of a larger strategic arc. And part of that is, as we look forward in 2026, as promised, we'll also begin diving back into carbon pricing. We'll do it thoughtfully, strategically, and grounded in everything we have learned over 19 years, 19 years of this work. We feel like we have a pretty good sense of where carbon pricing is at this moment and where the opportunities are. Carbon pricing is about telling the truth that pollution has a cost and that Americans deserve a fair, efficient, and durable solution. It is about meeting people where they are with language and framing that reflects their values, not just ours. And we're better prepared for this work than we've ever been because we understand that policy simply doesn't move because the idea is the best idea or it's a good one. It moves because trust exists, relationships are strong, and then the moment is right. There's some political safety there. So that brings me to Bridge. Today, we celebrate the launch of CCL's Bridge Advocacy Program. Now, Bridge stands for, in case you're wondering, Building Relationships in Dialogue, Growth, and Engagement. Bridge exists because the policies we need will not pass through echo chambers. They will pass through relationships, through conversations across differences, through volunteers who are trained not just to advocate, but to listen and to connect, and to be able to invite people in on their own terms if possible. And so Bridge is our disciplined choice to do the harder, more effective work, to build durable support, to recreate those conditions where solutions like permitting reform, Fix Our Forest, and carbon pricing ultimately succeed because they're seen as important to the constituencies, good solutions for their districts and states, and that there is political safety behind this support. So we enter 2026 grounded, hopeful, but clear-eyed. The road to meaningful climate policy is still uphill. There will be setbacks, there will be noise, there will be moments when the progress feels painfully slow, and yes, probably even will regress. There will be moments where it's easier to come apart than come together. But my ask of you is to stay engaged, stay relational, stay curious about people and the complexity in people. Our strength has just never been in how loudly we speak or how many statements we put out. It's been in how deeply we listen and how consistently we show up. And so I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being the kind of citizens that our democracy and our climate desperately need. So with that in mind, let's turn to doing some local highlights that really help bring and show how this progress is coming to life. So while you're adding some local highlights in the chat, I'd like to welcome Luke Clark to the spotlight. Luke has been a member of CCL for 4 years and co-leads the Golden Jefferson County, Colorado chapter. And Golden is a suburb in the foothills west of Denver, perhaps the most famous home of, if everyone knows, the Coors Brewery, right? Luke is also a member of the CCL Outdoor Recreation Team and enjoys climbing, skiing, and biking. He is a dog lover, which I think we'll hear about today, which I'll tell you a little bit more about. But Luke, first, I just want to say thanks for being here. Luke, we asked him to drop in this morning to tell us about the creative fundraiser he organized for CCL this past December as part of our year-end fundraiser. So Luke, if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit briefly about the fundraiser that you started.
Well, thank you, Ricky, and congratulations to you, by the way. I'm so honored to be here, and that was a powerful message. I really appreciate it. I'm going to start off saying to everybody, I know you don't want to do this. You don't want you don't want to ask people for money at the end of the year. We're all getting slammed with that. I didn't want to do it. I started, Laurel Eastman, who is one of the leads of the Outdoor Recreation Action Team, challenged us in 2024 to be creative and have some fun with it. And at that point, I said, okay, I challenge accepted. I'll do it. So I wanted to make a game out of it. So then I would study Japanese for at least 10 minutes every day of last December. And the game is the riddle. What is the connection with studying Japanese to my climate advocacy? And so I told anybody who donated, I gave them that connection. Uh, this year, I used my dog Aldo because he's a beautiful animal and provides a great visual. He also needs to be walked regularly, so I would walk him at least 1 mile for every pledge, whatever size came in, and asked people to guess his breed. Nobody did, but everybody who donated got the answer on that. So I think that being fun, I think it's important to have fun with everything we do.
That's fantastic, Luke. And so, if you were coaching, like this last question, if you were coaching another volunteer, like you said, it's not natural to a lot of us, right, to ask for money from people. So if you're coaching another volunteer who maybe is inspired by your actions and says next year they're going to do this, or it's just sort of unsure about what it is like asking people for money, what would you tell them?
Well, yeah, you got to get outside your comfort zone, but sometimes that's where the most powerful action is. I overcame my reluctance thinking this is important to me. And people who know me, my family and friends, know that I work with CCL. It's important to me. So, yeah, why not ask for it? We all get asked to donate to a 10K or this and that, and it's usually no big deal to donate. But everybody on this call is a member of CCL. You're working hard. We're working professionally, disciplined, focused, but let's have a little bit of fun with it. People, uh, it's a chance to widen our donor base. A lot of us are donors. CCL gets by on our financial support. Why not bring in some other people? I also found it to be a recruiting opportunity. One of my donors said, I want to know more about CCL. When I talked a little bit about how many lobby meetings we had, I saw his jaw drop, literally. And I don't have him yet, but he may be a member.
Awesome. Well, look, yeah, I find that when you tell people we do about 1,000 lobby meetings a year, it always blows people away too. So, but to say thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing your story. What you did is just really a great reminder that fundraising can be creative, personal, and even fun. So we're grateful for the energy that you bring to CCL, for your leadership in the Golden Chapter and the work you do with the Outdoor Recreation Team. We're just so lucky to have you. So thanks again for being here on Saturday.
I'm so glad to do it. Thank you.
Well, let's take a look at some of the local highlights that people have been dropping in the chat, just to give you a few to sink your teeth into. Anne in Seattle said that they had a meeting with her district rep and senators, and they are supporting a bill that would help permitting for climate projects at the state level. So fantastic. Anne, thanks for doing that. Elizabeth is mentions that she is proud to be a part of Gene Reitalk's Keeping Empowerment Alive group meeting. They meet weekly to keep focus on their challenging goals and review tools and actions that make those goals real. Thank you for that, Elizabeth. Ellen in North Carolina says she is thrilled to see a couple of inactive members returning to get re-engaged. Yes, that happens a lot, especially, excuse me, after the holidays. You do see some people re-engaging. In fact, our practice exercise later today in the act sheet we'll talk about hopefully gives you a way to think about talking about CCL in a more succinct way in what we're doing. And then the Bryan College Station, Texas chapter said they kicked off 2026 with a great tabling event, logging 46 climate conversations with a diverse crowd, especially a lot of families. And they launched a member interest survey to decide on the 2026 initiatives. Great. Well, thank you so much for those things. Allison, I don't know if we have any more, but we will continue. Let's move on since I think we're on track with our time. So, or maybe we're behind, we're off track. So we don't move right in. So just keep those highlights coming. They do remind us of what's possible and give us the agency and hope to keep moving forward. What comes next now is an invitation to go further together. We're excited to welcome Dr. Brett Cease, CCL's Vice President of Field Operations, to talk about the launch of CCL's Bridge Advocacy Program and what it means for the future of our advocacy. So Brett, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Will you first tell us a little bit about what is Bridge and why are we launching it now?
Of course, yeah. And, before anything else, I just wanted to make sure to share a good morning and a good afternoon to all the amazing CCL chapters tuning in from around the country today. It's wonderful just to see everything in the chat and all of the smiling faces across all of the Zoom screens. So just let me be a voice saying we appreciate all that each of you are doing to advocate on climate as we start the new year together. I speak on behalf of the whole staff team when I say that we are incredibly excited to be launching our program focus for the year ahead. Bridge will be our CCL focus as we do our work together throughout our year, and it stands for, as you've highlighted, Ricky, building relationships in dialogue, growth, and engagement. And at its heart, it's a volunteer training program designed to help all of us become even more effective climate advocates by deepening our skills in communication, relationship building, and strategic engagement. It's really about equipping volunteers to be more powerful and strategic climate advocates by grounding our work in the best of behavioral science and relational experience, because we know policy change doesn't happen just because we have the best data or strongest arguments. It happens when people feel understood, respected, and invited into solutions that connect to their own values. And Bridge will help us build exactly that kind of advocacy. It teaches us how people actually make decisions, why conversations sometimes stall, how we can effectively engage more, and not with pressure or debate, but with curiosity, with empathy, with strategic skill. We'll all have the chance to learn how to read the room and understand what truly motivates the audiences that we're engaged with and communicate in ways that strengthen trust instead of polarization. And this is key. For me, it's really important to name that we're not just going to be doing this as isolated individuals. We're doing it together as a coordinated movement. And when thousands of CCL volunteers across the country practice the same shared approach, listening well, aligning messages with values, building durable relationships, our impact compounds, right? We become more consistent, more strategic, more aligned in how we work with communities and members of Congress across the political spectrum. And we know we're in a moment where progress depends on durable bipartisan relationships and in long-term engagement with Congress and our communities. So CCL has always believed that relationships can change fundamentally what is possible on climate progress, and Bridge takes what many of our volunteers successfully have done and distills that down into skills that all of us can learn and then take action with.
Great. Thanks, Brett. Thanks for that summary of it. So then let's dive into the specifics then. And you mentioned a little bit of it, but what will volunteers actually learn?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think of Bridge as a practical, hands-on toolkit that's going to be designed to make our climate advocacy more effective in the real world. And it's grouped as a framework into trainings of three within three successive units. Throughout the first unit, CCL volunteers are going to learn the foundations of relational advocacy. We'll start in the month ahead by exploring how people actually arrive at their belief system, that intuition and emotion shape our reactions before logic kicks in, and why that matters for climate advocacy. Then we'll have the chance to look at moral foundations theory. We'll have the chance to help all of us understand why people in our lives see issues through different moral lenses. And then finally, put that into practice through moral reframing, really learning how to talk about climate solutions using language that genuinely resonates with whoever we're speaking with, right? Across political or cultural or personal differences. And then from there, we'll build on that foundation. And in unit two, we're going to have the chance to step into the role of an advocacy detective. We'll learn how to research our members of Congress, understand what pressures or priorities they face from their district, identify realistic next step actions, and we'll also introduce the scale of support, which helps all of us recognize where our policymakers currently stand and what it looks like in that uniquely tailored situation to move them forward. And then, after our summer conference here, we'll dive into Unit 3, where we shift into advanced communication and storytelling and persuasion skills. Volunteers will practice techniques that are drawn again from behavioral science, things that are in many of our wheelhouse: active listening, motivational interviewing, conflict de escalation, persuasive communications, and all of that really to feel confident and engaging in conversations that are respectful and constructive, even when there's disagreement. So, I think the key thing on that I did want to note, Ricky, is that probably most importantly, this isn't just material that we've pulled from a book, right? We've actually been in touch with nearly all of the researchers whose work that we're using and featuring, and they're aware of how Bridge is applying their theories in the real world. And they've expressed excitement about CCL volunteers using these tools to build bipartisan progress on the essential topic that we're all engaged in. So we're really hoping to, bring some of them into our national calls and trainings over the coming year ahead too, so you all can hear directly from their expertise as well.
And that's great, right? I know, like bring it down to a practical level. I know we've all been in lobby meetings where maybe not all of us, but if you've been in a lobby meeting before, sometimes you come in, you're so well prepared with your ask, and then for some reason it just doesn't quite land as we expect, or for some reason it doesn't connect with the staffer or the MOC in the way that we thought it would. I'm sure that many of us have had those moments. I think those are the moments when our bridge advocacy skills are necessary. First of all, getting us prepared for that moment, that it will help transfer our lobbying, but also all of our advocacy like that. Because I think when I notice like I'm stuck in that situation and realize that the person or persons I'm speaking with, that they're just good people, but they have a different worldview of framing. That's where the sort of the fun begins. I can start figuring out, okay, how am I going to connect with this person? So that's what I'm taking away what you're saying there. I think that's an opportunity where I'll be using it as well. So this is a huge undertaking, um, significant. How is this going to happen across the year? What should people expect?
Yeah, great question, Ricky. So, one of the most important parts of Bridge is that it isn't a one-time training or something that we all are just expected to absorb immediately, right? It's going to be comprehensive, it's going to be step by step, it's going to be a learning journey that we're moving through together over the course of our year ahead. And we're going to focus only on one bridge training each month at a time so that everyone has the space and the time to reflect, to practice, to apply the ideas in real conversations. And each month, a portion of our national meeting, actually, like today, will be dedicated to introducing that month's bridge concept, giving everyone a chance to see how it connects to our advocacy. You'll also see it show up in our monthly action sheet, where there'll be a standing item that highlights the training topic and invites chapters to practice that skill locally. It's going to help you as leaders feel confident maintaining and facilitating these conversations. And we'll make sure that for our volunteer leadership, we're providing that material first on our leadership calls with group leaders, with state coordinators, liaisons, action team leaders, so that they're getting that guidance and practice ahead of bringing it to their teams. And I'll also just say for anyone listening in today that wants to go deeper, we're going to host a monthly bridge deep dive training on the third Thursday of the month during that regular CCL training time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, once a month, where we'll have a chance to have a deeper dive into, giving space for discussion, examples, reflection on each of these topics. So really the rollout is intentional and supportive. We're going to learn together, we're going to practice together, and we're going to, build these skills gradually month by month so they become a natural part of, how we show up as climate advocates.
Yeah, so I'm hearing you saying it's like foundational. It's not just like, oh, we're going to bring a new concept to you. We're leaning into as a science-based organization, the behavioral sciences, and making that really a foundation for CCL, or just strengthening that. So what that kind of brings me back then to thinking about, like, we've had Dr. Height come speak to CCL before. We've had these, and most of the folks that we're using through this whole process to do so. So how does Bridge connect to CCL's history and identity as well?
Yeah, thanks for naming that, Ricky. And I really think, Bridge is a recommitment of CCL's programs and a return to our roots. Bridge features the research, the recommendations, and the expertise of speakers we've had on our monthly meetings, as you've said, from as far back as 2012. And, zooming even further back, from the very beginning of CCL, we have always invested deeply in not only what we advocate for, but how we advocate. Our early leaders like Mark Reynolds, Marshall Saunders, Madeline Para, Danny Richter, they all helped build the foundation for relational, respectful, bipartisan advocacy that so many of us were trained in. And Bridge really stands very much on their shoulders. As an organization, we've made the most progress when we build relationships, when we treat people with respect and listen with curiosity and work across differences to solve our problems together. I love how Luke mentioned this earlier. In my mind, Bridge really helps us provide a roadmap for that phrase that we love saying, that stepping outside of your comfort zone is where the magic happens. And I do want to name, Ricky, that, to acknowledge our launch of Bridge today wouldn't be possible without the many, many CCLers who are tuning in right now and who helped bring it into the present moment. I'm incredibly grateful for my colleagues in the field operations department, in CCL's leadership team. I want to specifically name both Elena Kappa and Brian Hermson for their incredible design and technical knowledge that make Bridge launch today possible. And so many staff members who have helped shape and test and bring these trainings to life, along with the design experts and pilot volunteers who have given us honest feedback and really helped refine what you see today for the better. And I know you're not going to like this, but I also want to thank you, Ricky, because truly the very spark for this program came from conversations that you and I had about how we can equip volunteers not only just with policy knowledge, but with the skills to build trust and navigate tough conversations and, really lead with confidence in the field in a really complex political moment.
Thanks, Brett. And so so it's great, it's foundational. Like, yes, this makes sense with the social science, but how do we see the Bridge really helping us in this at this moment?
Yeah, what a key question that brings us to our current moment. I'd like to acknowledge the real heaviness that many of us are feeling entering into the call today. For those of us here in Minnesota and, for many around the country, the recent tragedy of violence connected to immigration enforcement, has shaken our very larger sense of safety and trust. And moments like what we're living through remind us of how deeply personal politics really feels for so many people, and how important equally it is that we lead with humanity, with care, with connection, even when conversations are hard. So, we're launching Bridge at a time when Americans have diverse and important concerns about our current state of democracy. We're living in a time when people feel talked at instead of listened to. A lot of political discourse in our time is built around shaming, around calling out, around owning the other side. And Bridge is grounded in responding in this moment. by building the kinds of trust and connection and cross-difference communication that strengthens our very democratic life from the ground up. So our work together in Bridge will help all of us be something rare and deeply needed. Curious instead of combative, calm in tense moments, capable of disagreeing without, being disconnected, and, being relational while still being true to our values. Here's another way I like to think about it. Polarization is the problem we face. Relationship building is the strategy, and Bridge will be our tool to get us there. And in a time of heightened political tension, Bridge helps us stay grounded and to feel more effective together. It will help us give confidence that we're not just speaking, but we're opening doors and, helping create the conditions where real climate solutions can pass and endure.
Well, thanks for that, Brett. And so, as true to form, I'm horrible at keeping myself in my talk sometimes. So I went way over at the beginning, and so we're not going to have a lot of time for we're not going to have any time for Q&A about Bridge today. But again, this is foundational. We'll be talking about it. There's in all of our meetings go forward. But Brett, just so you can get people's excitement for what's available now, can you just screen share and show us the program as it's being launched today?
Yeah, and I'll be brief. And then any of you that have questions after this, please feel free to put them in the forums. But I'll show you all three levels of Bridge in a minute. So on the topic page that you can get to right from our drop-down menu for all training topics, we've undergone a big overhaul of what this looks like, putting Bridge front and center. And from there, you can dive into all three units and see what we've talked about already. If you go to Unit 1, that's what we're going to be focusing on in the quarter ahead. You can see your progress. You can see I've already obviously completed all three of these, but yours will look a little different as you've gone through and moved through each of these. There'll be an interactive quiz, a chance to read that, and after our training, the actual video will live there too. And then on the individual training level, you'll be able to see that we've got a very familiar looking read text, but it's much more stylized and the chance to kind of distill these core concepts in a way that I think you'll find is a lot more engaging and readable. So again, that's the brief overview. Looking forward to being available for anyone's questions after today, but thanks again for spotlighting this, Ricky.
Oh, Brett, and for everybody who has put this has been a true team effort. Lots of work has gone into this, and again, it'll be foundational to CCL, as foundational as practicing and operating with respect, appreciation, and gratitude. We have so much more to unveil and to go through this year together. So stay tuned. We're just starting to scratch the surface there. So thank you, Brett. Well, let's jump right into our actions for January. We talked about we have a fantastic opportunity to build on our ability to protect funding and to push back against some of the administration's desires to dismantle agencies. So our first live action together is going to support NCAR funding. What does NCAR sounds like? Sounds like a video game possibly, but no, that stands for the National Center for Atmospheric Research. So this is a program that is particularly important to climate science and the climate solutions. In December, the Trump administration announced its intention to break up NCAR. And in response to the Trump administration's actions, we have seen bipartisan support. So a congressional letter went to the leaders of the House or the Senate. I'm not sure, I forget which one, but recently pointed out that NCAR's research supports a wide range of real world applications, not only with climate science, but agricultural planning, drought and water management, wildfire behavior analysis, which is extremely important, flood forecasting, obviously huge, aviation safety. We don't think about it in that way, but they have a lot to do with making sure that our planes are safe, and emergency preparedness. So ultimately, funding for NCAR isn't up to President Trump or the administration, no one in the executive branch, it's up to Congress. So this month, we're writing to every member of Congress to remind them of their authority and to urge them to sustain funding for the National Center for Atmospheric Research. So go ahead and pull up the live action. It's at cclusa.org/live-action. I think they'll drop that link in the chat. You'll find our action tool. You can also All right. Thank you everyone for doing that. I can already see it looks like just looking at our vendor program, like over 420 messages were sent just now, and that's in those 3 minutes. So if you didn't have a chance to do that, you got the links there to continue to, you can do that later. And of course, that's going to be our action that we email out on Tuesday of this week as well. All right, so just let's go ahead and talk about the rest of our action sheets from January, what else we're going to be working on in the action sheet. You'll find important moments on our 2026 calendar that you and your chapter can plan around, including our national conferences, getting ready for Earth Day, and more. Sorry, I have a lingering cough. We wanted to share that calendar up front at the start of the year so you have a big picture of what's coming up and what your chapter can do to fill in the year. Of course, we have our media action as well this month. We're going to kick off 2026 by writing letters to the editor. You can write about in-car funding, which we just talked about, building support for the Fix Our Forest Act, which we're expecting the Senate to vote on here hopefully soon, or generally about climate action in 2026. It's been a very warm winter. There's plenty of opportunities to write letters to the editor about the warm winter and how we need climate action. So a cool thing that you may not remember, or it always doesn't at the front of your head, is to think about is that we have a monthly letter to the editor party. Doesn't that sound exciting? It's hosted by CCL's communications and media manager, Charlotte Ward. The next one will actually be this Thursday. So January 14th, and those parties are great. Charlotte gives everyone a quick training rundown on how to write a letter, and then you get sort of focused co-working time to write your letter together. So that's this Wednesday. Links in the chat. And then Thursday night, so you get your Wednesday night book. Now you got your Thursday night book because the permitting reform series continues. And of course, the process for permitting energy projects, we all know is too slow and we need to build faster. And so we'll be talking about how to build faster on our permitting reform series this week. So that we can make sure that we're doing it at the necessary speed and scale. That'll be Thursday night, and the link to that is in the chat as well. Now we do have a bonus action because it's for folks in snowy areas. If those exist, we do have a bonus action for you to host a snowman protest as an eye-catching way to promote climate action. It really is a fun opportunity to get together, your chapter and community, and draw some media attention. We have seen success with that in the past. The details are in your action sheet. And lastly, as we talked about, and Ellen mentioned earlier in her highlight, that new people or people maybe are re-engaging with CCL. And as we sort of double down and come back to, like Brett said, what has made us successful in the past and really lean into relational advocacy. The communication exercise this month will help you make a practice a clear, confident way to explain what CCL is focused on, to talk about, the things that we think are needed so that everyday people can have a real impact on climate action. And so, help you to prepare for those conversations. There's a communications exercise. A really smart man once told me that unless you get in the mirror or unless you practice with people, you're probably not going to be, repeating yourself, or you're not going to be as fluent as you can be with your speech. And so, I think doing these practices together is some of the most important work that we can be doing because it opens the room for dialogue as well. So thank you for being here for the kickoff of 2026 and at this meeting. The link is not working, so something's not working right now. I'm not quite sure what it is. Oh, the log your attendance. It should be working now. I'm sorry, it wasn't working earlier, so they just dropped the link in the chat again. That's to log your attendance for today, so make sure that you do that. Our next month, February meeting is on Saturday, February 14th. I promise I won't talk so much. I'm excited about Kickoff 2026 with all of you, and so what we're going to accomplish this year. And
Thank you for listening to this episode of Citizens Climate Lobby's training program. You can tune into more episodes anywhere podcasts are available. Inspired by what you heard today? Join Citizens Climate Lobby to advocate for bipartisan climate solutions. Go to community.citizensclimate.org to find more trainings, resources, your local chapter, national action teams, discussion forums, and more. Be sure to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and Instagram @CitizensClimate. We also invite all of our listeners to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiration.
Like what you hear? Recommend us to your friends and make sure to give us a 5-star rating. It helps us show up on other listeners' feeds. Feel free to pass on any suggestions for future episodes in the comments as well.
And together, we are creating the political will for a livable world.